welcome back from the coffee break on this Friday afternoon. It's now my honor to chair this last panel of today's conference, the role of universities in a platform-dominated world. Already this morning, Helga said that we're seeing a power shift from the academic world to the industry world, and I think this is what all of us are witnessing and are partly concerned about. And I'm really delighted to announce Gerti Kappel as our speaker. I don't think it's really necessary to introduce Gerti here, but I will do so nevertheless. Gerti has been Dean of the Faculty of Informatics since 2020. So Gerti is the boss here, right? So and with that, I could really stop my introduction, but apart from being the boss, she's also full professor of business informatics at the Institute of Information Systems Engineering, with her research interests being mainly in the areas of model engineering, web engineering, process engineering, and a special focus on cyber physical production systems. Before coming to the TU Wien, she was a full professor and also Dean of Academic Affairs at Linz University. She's held many important positions. I found it particularly thrilling to hear that she initiated and led the Women Postgraduate College for in Information Sciences, and apart from that, she's also an advisor to the Weizenbaum Institute. She was on the board of the FWF, so our national science funding organization, and I couldn't imagine anybody better suited to talk about this role of universities in a platform-dominated world. Gerti, we're so thrilled to have you here, and yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, normally, as Christine was saying, I have to. We have a lot of events, and I have to open them and I have to close them. And normally, I forget to say thank you. So I said, no, that's my first slide today. I want to thank you all that you are here. The topic will kind of follow us and will be with us for a longer time, perhaps for all the future time, but it's very important that we have flocked together to discuss this topic of what's the role of computer science. And you know, it can't be overestimated. So thank you that you are here. Thank you to the Austrian taxpayer, because they are paying quite a lot for this event here. Thank you for who is doing all the work, our communications team. And normally, I forget them. So it's really great that the whole communication team has made this possible here. Thank you to IWM, the Institute from the Sciences of the Humans. You know Ludger, he has given the introduction yesterday. And it is really, I can tell you, 3 years ago, I didn't even know how to spell this. And since then, we really built up a very good cooperation in the area that computer science is not only technical, it has something to do with humans also. Yeah, and last but not least, Hannes, who is pushing us forwards all the time. And it's good that that he's pushing us forwards. You know, he will turn 70 tomorrow, but he will push us nevertheless the next 70 years. So, you have heard that I am Dean, and therefore I take also the liberty to say, okay, it's our birthday. It's not only our birth year. The Faculty of Informatics is 20 years old. And why I start with this is we not only had one event to celebrate this happening, we had several events. And I can tell you more or less what we discussed over the last 2 days. To a certain extent, we discussed it the whole year. Yeah? Our first event was on democracy in the AI. And it happens to be that also Christiane was kind of moderating this event. And you know, it was really very important that we start in January with it on discussing how AI and democracy is going together with all the ups and downs, knowing that I think half of the mankind is kind of voting or has been voting this year. We continued with physical AI. We have this lecture series, or the Gödel lecture series, and it was Daniela Rus from MIT, head of the CSAIL, who was talking about how AI and robotics will kind of merge, or has already merged, and how it will continue. But I think one of the most important events of our celebration year was, and I have it now only here in German because it was in German, our minister was here, so we had to do it in German. It was the EduLab Bildungsfrühstück. It was, Bildungsfrühstück means education breakfast. It was an introduction of our workshops, of the Faculty of Informatics, which we provide to pupils, to primary school, secondary school, both junior and senior secondary school, where we teach them all different things, computational thinking, coding, but also AI. We teach them how a neural network works, how a decision tree functions. And it was amazing to see how this kind of knowledge kind of opens up the mind. You even could see that people now differently all of a sudden think of AI, because they read it every day. Yeah? The AI is doing that, the AI is doing something, and they have no idea what AI is all about. And I guess this is then where also the role of the universities come in. So, in fact, you are here not to discuss our celebration year. Here you want to hear something about the role of the universities in the platform-dominated world. And I guess this is, you know, the topic is overwhelming, and I just want to bring up some issues which then will be continued by Stefan and by George, and then we have the discussion together. And I really liked, and I have to say I had the slides were ready before I listened to Nosche Contractor's presentation. I really liked the kind of the view of Nosche, saying how can we look about it in an utopic, dystopic, neutral, and because this happens. Yeah? There was a meeting of directors of universities in the DACH area. DACH means Germany, Austria, Switzerland. Yeah? And directors were also discussing what is the role of universities. And apparently it was a very dystopic meeting, because most of them, not being computer scientists, most of them said, we can give up. You know, we don't have the resources, we can't pay the best people, they are going to the big tech, so we give up. And our rector was also attending this meeting, and he's a civil engineer, he's also not a computer scientist, but he has a mobile. And he phoned me and said, Mrs. Kappel, there was such a dystopic meeting. Please give us a head up on AI. Your colleagues in the Faculty of Informatics know what it is all about. And this happened last Friday. And I can just tell you this was one of the most important things I did the whole year. Go home to your rectors and tell them what AI is all about. Because nobody has an idea, not even we here. You know, we were discussing and the data and the bias, and when we say AI, do we mean only ChatGPT, which would be stupid, and is it LLM? No, because LLM is only part of machine. But that even we, as a kind of being scientists in the area, also have different opinions. What do you think what our kind of the head, our rectorates, they are completely lost. So this is really the most important finding I have to this topic. But of course, still there are these platforms around, and the big techs who are making who are making trouble. On the other hand, another thing is Hans Ackermann yesterday during dinner, we were discussing about why I'm dean, and okay, I can tell you afterwards. So he said, university policy is village policy. Perhaps it's even smaller, but okay, it's village policy. And I can't agree more. And what we really have to do, we have to join forces. We have to think as we are too small. Vienna is too small, Austria is too small. We have to think in bigger alliances. I mean, there is one example, what 3 universities and Charité in Berlin have done. They have built this, or they have constructed this Berlin University Alliance. And it's not only to be higher ranked, I mean, it's more to develop a common understanding, to share resources. You know, as we have heard, this was really totally interesting, the discussion before how science will change. And it will change. The one or the other way, it will change. But who is training the scientists? Who is training the students? We have to do it. But now, to a certain extent, we don't even know it by ourselves, but we have to. We shouldn't let this to, the big tech or other institutions. Join forces. And this goes along because this is what the role of university is, and I'm following really this Humboldt principle, unity of research and teaching. Because this is what, in fact, this is the freedom why we are, as we have, and why we are at a university, that we decide with which topic we want to work and how we want to work. And with the freedom comes with responsibility, which means that we also have to, as I always say, train. We have to really put forward our our ideas, how the world should develop. Yeah, and because the last point here was shared resources. When I was saying they have to be, it must be obligatory. This goes also along in this. Everybody thinks that this is my part and I don't have to look in the other. We really have to either be forced to join to share resources, or we are doing this by ourselves. Excuse me, wrong direction. Doing it by ourselves, because, and I really liked when. Helga Nowotny mentioned CERN yesterday. I think that we really have to build up more and more this kind of federated, collaborating environments. We don't have to dig a circle in the hole like it is done in CERN, but to a certain extent, perhaps we have. In the sense of where do we put all the computers and the data centers? As at least, also having children, one important aspect for me, which I think we discuss not enough, is really the energy consumption. And of course, this goes with, at the same time, we are solving problems. So green AI versus AI for green, or sustainable AI, or you can also say green computer science versus computer science for sustainability. Sustainable computer science versus computer science for sustainability. My answer normally here is that we are not only the problem maker, we are also the solution provider. But we should put forward more arguments. We should put forward more evidence that we are also the solution providers. And again, we have to train the students. We have to tell the students that they have it in their hand. We all know that technology is not, it's not neutral, as we also have heard it in the afternoon. And it's really a very little small thing what we have established in Austria, that we have a common over all computer science departments in Austria. There are only 7, but at least over all computer science departments in Austria, we have a common lecture series called Sustainability in Computer Science, where we tackle the different. This is a very first, you can say it's next to nothing, but it's really important that we kind of provide the perception to the students, the right perception. Yeah, and education is getting more and more important. Now, I was talking about unity of research and teaching. With education, as I already mentioned, I go even from the university also then in direction of the schools. And those of you who have been at the dinner yesterday evening, you know that the Digital Humanism Initiative, and again, this is a huge part, we have to thank here Hannes Wertner, is not only, or didn't stop at the scientific, at the university level, but there is a new school book, so far in German, but I have learned it will be translated, where the school book is kind of covering the most important parts of the book, Introduction to Digital Humanism, with a lot of examples. I have it here. I think some of you already got a copy, so if anybody thinks he or she knows German, you can come to me. We have more copies to share with you. But the more important thing is that it's not only a book, because you know it can sit somewhere and then there is dust on top of it, but there will be an own subject, an own course on AI and digital humanism. We start with the first school in a secondary school, where the curriculum is now developed together with colleagues from our faculty. And starting with winter term, there is an own course there. Again, there are then perhaps 50, or perhaps there are 100 pupils who will hear this. This is not even, you know, one drop on a stone, but nevertheless, we have to start. We can't say, like the rector said in their meeting, we can't do anything. Everybody can do something. And at least we at universities, we are privileged enough. And therefore we have to go along. Last but not least, my last slide. You know, there was a lot now about AI in science and what we have heard. And when I listened to Moshe Wade in the morning, he said, well, but AI in science means that the machine only gives us kind of suggestions based on the past, but don't think in a broader sense. Then, of course, we can say, what's the goal of science? No? And the goal of science is that we have to ask why something happens, and to certainly also how it happens. We are in a technical university, we always also want to build something, also how it happens. And we have to train, we have to think of how to train our peers and our students. And I really liked all the examples from Noshir, and I have to say, he had this example of Node LM, where you just can put all your PDFs and videos in, and they make some summary of it. Just by chance, my son is studying biology, and just yesterday he sent me a message, Mama, do you already know? And of course I didn't know, because the talk was today from Noshir. But what I want to say, he's studying biology. And he really refuses computer science, since his parents are doing computer science. But that means I know we have the problem of pace now. We don't know how to run faster, and it doesn't work, and nevertheless we should run faster. But really it is up to us computer scientists, where the role of faculty of informatics and departments of informatics come in, that we teach our peers, our students, not only in our subject, but also up to the rector, also in the other areas, how to use AI. And even if we don't know, and I don't know if we will have a final answer to a certain extent, but we have to, to say with all the doubts we have by ourselves, how to come along with this new technology. Edward Lee was giving a presentation about the unexplainability of AI I think it was in May 22. And I guess this is for me, one of the most crucial parts, talking to other scientists as from other fields, to the rector or to my relatives. When they ask, but are we sure that the result is true? we have to we must find ways to explain the systems. If you can't explain a system, how can you trust the system? I just do a little bit of a teaser. There seems to be, most probably on the horizon, there will be a new doctoral college in our faculty of informatics in the area of automated reasoning, which is explicitly tackling the question of explainability, correctness, certification. Again, it's a little drop on a hot stone, but I'm pretty sure that as a scientific part, we have to work in this area. Yeah, and really now, last but not least, this has, I think, also not only with AI, but in general, something to do with the role of independent research, a role of universities, not only in a platform-dominated, but in a, geopolitical-dominated world. 4 months ago, I was confronted with the term knowledge security. And if you know that in our faculty, we have one kind of focus in the whole area of knowledge representation and the other area of security. And my first thought was, are they combining knowledge, how to make it kind of protect it against malicious takeovers? Yeah, to a certain extent, I was perhaps right. And then I learned, that there is really a political dimension behind it. And it happens to be that all universities in Austria who have now made all public universities who had to do their contracts with the ministry. This is we are running in a 3-year plan. The next one is for 25 to 27, and all had to sign some text, some statements about knowledge security and research security. And I think here this is something where we really, as a scientist, when we talk about open access, open science, we really have, we have to find a way how to come along with it. I have not the final answer. I say China versus US versus, I don't know, rest of the world, but I guess this is where we really should be very open-minded and discuss it and find ways. And I think it's also, I think it was even Helga saying it, that, when there is war everywhere, science was always the place where perhaps people still could meet. And I hope this is fair on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gerti. That was really very concise, and I think we all profited a lot also from the best practice examples which you gave. We now have our 2 commentators, and I'm thrilled to announce them. I think, Stefan, you will start, right? So, Stefan Klein is Professor of Interorganizational Systems at the University of Münster in Germany and the Director of the European Research Center of Interorganizational Systems. His main research interests are digital infrastructures, digitization in general, societal risk, and in particular the transformation of work. He's also held various posts. He was vice dean, he was dean, he held a series of positions in 5 different countries, not going to list them all now. And we are really looking forward to what he's going to say. I think he's going to also focus on the role of publishing and what platforms, what digitization means for academic publishing, for our intellectual property. Stefan, we are really looking forward, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Christiane, for your kind introduction. Thank you, Gerti, for laying out the floor for sort of our continuing discussion. And I'd like to add, and then because I don't have, given the nature of your talk, nothing sort of to dispute or correct or whatever. So the discussion about the relationship between universities and industry in general is an old one. There have been many contributions, empirical work, and so on. So the focus here today is more on the big tech companies and the platforms. So it's a specific facet of that. If you look at the role, sort of you see these industries, including now the big techs, have sort of there are many facets of this role, from sort of future employers, partners in education, partners in research. And so I think it's a role we can, and a relationship we have to take seriously and think how to develop it and how to shape it in a way that is conducive to our own goals. As we have heard this morning about the power shift, I think what we have been observing, in particular with the focus on the big tech companies, that the relationship is changing and is becoming increasingly asymmetric. And the companies are trying to dominate, and they have become exploitative in ways that we haven't experienced before. Just a little anecdote, sort of like at the University of Münster, sort of we're strictly instructed not to use Microsoft Teams because of privacy concerns. Overnight, the policy had changed. So I inquired and said, well, what is happening? 180% turnaround. There was a new contract signed between Microsoft and the German universities for the EDU package. And so the universities have signed it, and I asked, so how could you do it, given the privacy concerns before? They said, well, we had specialized lawyers and legal advisors, and they didn't understand the contract. So by general perception, the new contract is worse than before. Microsoft gets more money and gets more data than they had in the past. So I think this is just one little anecdote about what I mean here. And also, if you think about collaboration in research, and we have had other examples already over the past 2 days, most of you will remember the Facebook social contagion study with Cornell, which raised a lot of concern because Facebook did not follow the policies and the rules that had been established by the Psychological Association in society about informed consent. So they had involved, as you remember, 200,000 people without telling, and exposed half of them with positive content and half of them with negative content, and then studied what was going on. So this is just, again, another anecdote, an example about some of the issues that we're seeing, because the point is that there are very different frames of reference, ideologies, or sets of values. And these companies clearly enforce their own set of values, and so we have to see how we will respond to it. As Christiane kindly said, well, I want to elaborate one example a little further, and this is the academic publishing industry, which have become platformized quite a bit. And as you have heard, my background is information systems, so I am aware, so don't get me wrong, that some of the publishing practices in computer science are different. So you have much more emphasis on conference publications, so I'm aware of that. So you have to take this with a grain of salt and say, well, this is not exactly what we are expecting and experiencing, but I think this is a broad trend, and Elsevier, who I will talk about, is the biggest player all over globally in sort of academic publishing. So this is a stylized model about the research process from the idea to sort of and eventually academic employment. So it's a broad picture. So look how it looks now from the lens of Elsevier. They are all over the place. They have over 60 digital solutions, and they have acquired a number of companies and are dominating the field now. And you see, I hope it works. Yeah. You see the little AI that was not in the original slide, but I added it. They have now Scopus AI, which is their LLM, and their sort of GPT version, which is on the market already, and the universities are deciding whether they are going to buy it or not. What we see now, that is the work that academics do, knowledge production, not just publication, not just the distribution part, is fundamentally changing and is profoundly influenced by platform companies And what we could call here the academic workflow is infrastructured. So we see sort of systems of systems working together. And why is this a matter of concern? So I don't want to sound dystopian, because I think we have to think about what we can do about it. But still, I think it's our role as academics also to be aware and be very clear about the risks we are facing. It's not only that Elsevier makes a lot of money from this. As some of you may know, the gross profit ratio is about 40%, 38 to 40%, consistently over the past years, which is more than Google, Facebook, Netflix, the very successful examples of the tech company. So they are higher. And for obvious reasons, if you're interested, I can elaborate on that a little more. So they are widely perceived as quite exploitative and as a monopolistic player in the market. But more importantly, and this is why I think this image and this figure matters, they have terms and conditions, and I don't know how many of you are aware of this, and we had a brief discussion about it beforehand, which say whatever data the user uploads or puts into any of the platforms, Elsevier will get automatically an unlimited usage right. Every search you do, every paper you upload to SSRN, which they own, have bought, every review, every submission, accepted or not, all of this, Elsevier claims unlimited usage rights for themselves and the people and the companies they work with. And they are a subsidiary of RLX, which is an even bigger information platform owning, for example, Lexis. So there's an issue, and you turn it around and play it back to the discussion. So it was very, very grateful for the previous session, because it's like a springboard. Now think, and there's an argument that has been made, who is the main beneficiary from LLMs? Publishers, because they have the best content. If you think about machine learning, now you have companies who have all submissions, the accepted and the non-accepted. They have an average acceptance rate of 20%. So they have 8 times more, so they have, 5 times more papers that they can use for learning, and can say, well, this works accepted, this not, and they have the reviews, and they can even see what are the reasons why this happened. So I think it's a very, for them, a very good situation in terms of information to build on. And so what is happening? So we see commercial control of this field, and abused in many ways. And also, they have taken over the idea of open access in many ways, and crippled sort of the development of the so-called green open access developments, or Diamond, where sort of there's no payment involved, and they have this what they call APCs, this publishing fees for what they claim, and they say, well, we are the real players in open access. The vertical integration I showed you already, which means then datafication, data collection, harvesting at a big level, and which also confirms to the second point. And my concern at this stage is that this will profoundly change knowledge production. So assume that we have before long the equivalent of ChatGPT available for students based on the training of these data, of academic data. So and I think they will look at this, and Elsevier will more and more claim to be a knowledge producer themselves and compete with sort of universities. So what should we do? I think there's one big issue here about norms and ethics, because we are confronted with a company, and we had this yesterday about the bullshitting, who always claim they are collaborating with the universities, they are the big sponsor of university, they adhere to all our values, they are very big on integrity and so on. So they're all the nice stories. But if you look at the background, you see that sort of they don't walk their talk. and they, in the end of the day, they are a commercial company and they prioritize their commercial goals. We also have then the situation of a potential conflict between institutional rationale, because this session is taking an institutional view mainly, and individuals. Like you said also with the research security. So there's the official policy, but on the other hand, in many countries, sort of there's freedom of academic research. So the individual researcher can claim, okay, this is my right and this is my decision. I decide where I publish, I decide who I share this information with or not. What can we do about developing a relationship? And here I want to add on what you said already. I think there are different options in terms of governance models. There is this European Research Infrastructure Consortium. So the idea, and this is broader, this is not just about, it's not about publishing. It's the idea sort of we need to build an infrastructure at the European level. Have it interoperable, so it's not a center, it's a federated system. And the other is just a little anecdote following what Gerti has said. The North Rhine-Westphalian universities were concerned that Dropbox would be the main source for sort of uploading and cloud version for sharing information, and that sort of some of the information might end up in the US. So they decided to collectively source a different cloud platform, which is called Skiebo, and they did it as a collective effort across North Rhine-Westphalia. Clearly, there is an issue, and I started with the example of Microsoft, an issue of how do you design a contract? Because it's clear that in some of the areas, collaboration is inevitable. Even those universities have to think whether they really need to take some of the control back over the infrastructure components. But that's a bigger debate, and I'm not in the position to explain what exactly and how to do it. But assume for those parts where there's not the option, for financial reasons, for political reasons, for competence, whatever, there is, in my field, sort of the concept of relational contracting. So it's not just you write a contract and you hope to enforce it, but it's the idea to really sit together and say, okay, what are the values that we have? What is it that we want to achieve individually, and how can we get the best outcome jointly? And I think that would be likely my optimistic view, or utopian perhaps, to say, well, I would hope that sort of in the future, for infrastructure provider and platform providers that we need to work with, we would be able to have such a relational contract to say, well, what do we want, and to be able to enforce it, and not to be dependent on clauses that they set and check it. And there's the reference for it. About the norms and values. You may have heard about Magna Carta Universitatum. So that's the idea to use the old Magna Carta in Britain, 13th century, which was not so successful, but was clearly trying to establish rules and norms and freedoms. And here to say, well, we have three principles for universities. Again, at the institutional level, independence of research and teaching. And here in particular, therefore, I've highlighted it, intellectually and morally independent of all political influence, which is a big problem these days, and economic interests. Second, teaching and research, you said it already. And third, sort of free inquiry and debate, which is sort of the basis of inquiry, basis of finding and exploring truth, and basis of research. So you are the dean. Are you aware that whether TU Wien is a signatory of the Magna Carta?
I have no idea.
Yes, 1988, they signed it. So this is, in a way, we could even refer to the principle and say, well, the university is part of this. And this should be or could be a basis of where we want to go, where we could go. So these are a list of principles, just in case the slides are shared, and you can look at them. So let me finish with a provocation, and then you can respond to it. There's a paper by Zsuzsanna Zupow, 2022, about sort of surveillance capitalism, which is the behavior that we see sort of in these platforms, and democracy. in organization science paper, and she said, well, we can have surveillance capitalism, we can have democracy, we cannot have it both. And I use it as an inspiration to elaborate on it and say, well, it is possible to have research information analytics capitalism, and the title refers to the way that Elsevier has rebranded. They are no longer a publisher, they are now an information analytics business. So this is how they brand themselves and sell themselves. It's possible to have this, and it's possible to have scholarly communication, a scholarly communication system and research shaped by academic values. But my claim, it's not possible to have both. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Stefan. A lot of food for thought and discussion. But before we start our discussion, we will first have the paper of George Metakides. I don't think it's really necessary to introduce him here. George holds professorships currently both with the University of Southampton and the European University in Cyprus. He's the president of the World Enlightenment, Digital Enlightenment Forum. He has a really impressive CV. His research is on the economic, societal, and political impacts of digitization. But when you look at his CV, you're really, really impressed. So he holds a PhD in mathematical logic from Cornell University. He's had academic positions at MIT, at Cornell, and a number of other top-notch universities before he returned to Greece and to take up a chair of logic at the University of Patras. He was also engaged in a number of important movements, just to mention maybe, as this has been mentioned various times, also yesterday, he was the director of the Esprit program, and he also worked towards the World Wide Web Consortium in 1983. He holds a number of honorary degrees and is a member of many national academies of sciences. George, we are really looking forward to hearing your view on the relationship between the universities and the big platforms. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christiane. Thank you, and apologies in advance. I'm the last obstacle between you and the first drink of the evening. That I hope will be coming soon. The title of this session has a question and a statement. The question is, what is the role, or what should be the role? It's really a question, but there's also a statement, a categorical statement, that we live in a platform-dominated world, and I will try to say some things about whether these two can really coexist. First, just a quick history, not full history, just an aspect of the history of universities. I already asked and received the permission that everybody has the right to be an amateur historian, and the universities today have this dual character. Let me, in a caricaturing fashion, say that part of it comes from Plato's academy, through Sorbonne and Bologna and whatever, starting with philosophy, then layered with a thick layer of dogma, religious dogma, and then after the 18th century Enlightenment, we have the so-called vocational schools. Before that, that training was done through apprenticeships exclusively. And this responded to a demand by the military, by civil service, and by industry. There was a demand for people trained in this way. So we had the École Nationale des Ponts et Chaussées, which still operates, and then the École Polytechnique, which served as the prototype for practically all engineering schools afterwards, who started proliferating in Europe and the US. In the US it was RPI. In Europe there were more at the time, including TU Wien, that was instituted by Emperor Franz II in 1815. And then branches of engineering were being added and continued to be added. And after that, the Plato Academy descendants and the vocational school descendants sort of merged. Sorry, I'm Mediterranean, so I move my hands. I forget that it doesn't work unless you wear a mic. So this is what we have today, and I think it's clear that the Industrial Revolution really transformed the university world by creating effectively from nothing, from zero, the vocational part. The digital revolution, has it transformed the university landscape? I have to also push this downwards, I think. Yes. And the answer is not really. Not yet. I mean, if Napoleon came and visited TU Wien next week, I don't think he would be shocked or surprised. He thinks things would look familiar. However, if you believe that AI will radically transform vocations, well, then it's inescapable that the vocational part of the university will also be transformed. The question is how and by whom, and according to whose choices. The main role of the university as we know it today is research, teaching, and services, presumably to society, for the common good. Knowledge creation through research, dissemination through teaching, and not only, and then application. Research is already curtailed due to the domination that is in the title. There were recent announcements by the Dean of Information Computer Science at my alma mater at Cornell, and similarly by the director of the CSAIL lab at MIT, who said clearly, we forget about building LLMs, training them. We don't have the resources, we don't have the data, we don't have the access to NVIDIA GPUs. So we concentrate on doing research on applications. These were the leaders of two of the major research groups in the world. There are other self-restrictions that I will not go through. This is not without precedent. There were also, I'm thinking back to the games, you know, the industry of games when it started. I remember some of my colleagues at the university that were doing research in games that would love to go for their sabbatical to one of the industries, because the industries were, you know, much more advanced, they had more resources and so on. But the gap now is becoming huge, and it's increasing rapidly. So what can be done? And here I come to Gerti's talk about alliances and also Stefan's. We have examples of alliances, of federations of universities trying to make up for this gap, at least partially. Already the Berlin grouping was mentioned. There are others. Very recently, last month, the New York State formed the Empire AI Consortium with an endowment of 400 million. Is that enough? By no means. But it shows a certain direction in which things can go. That addresses the resources issue. It does not address the talent issue, not unless you double all your professor salaries, Gerti, which will not happen. Universities are losing this race. They're just losing it. I mean, it's they accept. If you look at statements of deans of various universities, they accept reluctantly joint appointments, saying something like, "Well, it's better to have them partially on campus than not to have them at all," because simply they cannot keep them. The domination has another aspect, which is affecting something fundamental to universities as they were described in the Magna Carta ideas of Stefan's presentation. Universities to adhere to freedom and independence. The big tech companies are making huge donations to universities. They're ramping up. In return, they get seats on advisory boards that determine important decisions. There is direct funding of research projects, direct funding to researchers. 60% of tenure-track professors, Berkeley, MIT, and Stanford, received big tech funding for research on AI, social media, and disinformation. And 100%, the previous is checked with at least 2 different sources. The second is my estimate. 100% depend for their research on getting access to data that only these companies have. The dependence is increasing. Larry Lessig has started a project called the Academic Integrity Project. The idea is to check, to verify the independence of academic work. Okay. He intends to submit that to the US Academy of Arts and Sciences. And guess what? He's still looking for funding to do that. There was a case mentioned by Stefan earlier. I could provide you with a list of such cases, saying the case of, you remember the Perry Mason books, some of you, the Errol Starley Gardner books, it's always the case of the yellow canary, the case. There are many such cases. There was the science study in 2023 with 30 authors, mixed, some from some of the very best universities and some from research labs of companies like Menlo Park. Meta funded the research. The conclusion announced by Nick Clegg. Nick Clegg was a British politician and now works for as kind of an ambassador at large of Meta. He announced that there was no detectable impact of Meta algorithms on polarization. Okay. Then there was subsequent research headed by a group in Amherst that showed that Meta had tinkered with the algorithm during the research study. Meta's response to that was that, yes, it's possible that if the algorithm was not tinkered with, the result would be different, but not sure. And this brings the analogy with the big tobacco companies for about 40 years, from 1950 to 1990. It's not explicit manipulation of research. I mean, these researchers from Princeton, from Stanford, from CMU were not, did not get money. They were not bribed to do fake research. But the whole effort was framed in a way to create doubt. Because the end result was to say, there's no definite proof. I mean, that's what the tobacco companies did. That's why this is called the tobacco company strategy. The strategy is to be able to say there's no definite proof linking smoking with disease. Okay, so there's no definite proof that social media algorithms are linked with polarization, disinformation, and so on. There were many other cases. John Donovan is a striking case. He was forced to resign effectively from Harvard Kennedy School, and others. And there are additional issues that I suggest that we all just keep in the back of our minds as this story unfolds. For example, Stefan mentioned Skiebo, I don't know how it's pronounced, which was an effort by a group of German universities to make themselves a bit less dependent on the platforms. Okay, in the Netherlands, there was an agreement called SURF that also limits the data flow and the control. But kind of being motivated by a digital humanism project that is to take place in Rwanda next year, and headed, of course, by Hannes in the day before his round number birthday. I looked and they are really, if you allow the expression, screwed. I mean, in other words, they were not in a position of power to negotiate a good deal. So it's primarily Google and Microsoft that are taking everything from them, all the data flow or complete control. Take a look at it, it's shocking. I mean, I don't know, those of you that know the story that Thucydides tells about the Athenians and the Melians, the Athenians and the island of Milos, and the so-called negotiations that took place where the Athenians effectively slaughtered all the Melians because they had the power to do it. Well, this is the case with the big platforms and African universities today. There are other things that may be down the road that we may see. There's already talk about big tech creating vocational schools. Just the vocational part. For the time being, I think they're content in just invading existing ones. If that happens, will the Polytechnic descendants survive? How? I mean, or will they survive still maintaining their pertinence? Or will they be reseparated from their Plato Academy descendant counterparts, which would be terrible, because then all the humanist ideas that digital humanism tries to promote, that say computer scientists and not only, should also develop a conscience about the impact of their work on society. All that would be lost. I did not think to end with a kind of striking quote like Stefan did with his Zuboff quote. So let me just invent one. You can have universities that are free and independent, and you can have a world dominated by big tech platforms. But you cannot and will not have both. Now, this is a bit of a gruesome note on which to end, so let me end with something different. Happy 70th, Hannes. And next time next time we have a beer together, I will tell you some secrets about the wonders of life after 70. Thank you very much.
So I hope these mics work. Yes, they do. So thank you so much, George. For a moment, I was really afraid you would end on a pessimistic note, but then, you know, I was glad it turned out differently. So thank you so much. That was really fascinating, all those three perspectives. Maybe let me start with, you know, you said universities are losing the race. This is when I was really quite depressed when I was sitting there. But I also remember Gerti saying, you know, there is still a lot we can do. And so I'm wondering, I mean, we're here in a country where we are currently having negotiations for a new government and so on and so forth. So what, maybe Gerti, may I turn to you, what would be the next steps for a new government to maybe avoid losing the race entirely?
I hope the government next is listening to us. You know, don't build walls. Yeah, you know, because we know when you are inside the wall, you die by starvation. So it doesn't work. So go out. Yeah. Join forces with the other countries, European Union. And even what we really have to do is we have to, if you say, I think, George, you know, the infrastructure is not enough and so on, and also what MIT and Cornell now also said, but I guess there is much research also to do in not only saying more and more data and big data. Yeah, you have to do also research, and there are solutions in the area of that we in domain-specific areas. The medicine was a topic today, so we really, I think, have to here join forces where we say, okay, we have to go into data sovereignty, that we use our data by ourselves, but yeah, also sharing them with, you know, colleagues, friends, collaborators. We have to build up the right privacy issues, which is not the issues. We have to build up privacy-enhanced technologies, which is possible. We are, I think, really so far having, to a certain extent, not done enough, at least not in Austria. We have to continue here in this respect and build our. The example was from Stefan, build our own infrastructures also. And not build walls. This would be really the worst thing.
Now, thank you so much. So joining forces, how big is big enough? So certainly not, you know, Lower Austria versus Upper Austria versus Vienna. That's maybe quite obvious. Maybe not Austria, but what about the European Union? We have seen what Musk, you know, kind of wrote back to Thierry Breton. I'm not going to repeat it. This is recorded. So. Yeah, is the European Union big enough? Is it the right level to take action against the big platforms? I mean, we're now seeing the big cases, right? And we are seeing action being taken on the basis of the Digital Services Act and other pieces of regulation. But is that big enough? And will it work?
The European Union certainly is big enough, but it's getting smaller. It's getting smaller in every way. It's getting smaller. When I went there, what was it, in the 1980s, it had the same GDP as the United States. Today it's about half of that. There was no digital gap, so to speak, in terms of digital giants, because, you know, the digital technology was still in its infancy. So it's getting smaller. There is now there is now some hope that initiatives outlined in the Letta and Draghi reports could start. So, you know, I mean, if we want to be optimistic, yes, the things could be done at the European level. The size is there. Is the determination there? Gerti can answer that.
You know, I'm not a politician, but I think that what we as university have to do is we have to kind of push our politician that there must be a determination. And we also have to do our, to a certain extent, homework, that we talk to the politicians, that we kind of offer, like you, Christiane, have worked at the European Union level, that we offer also our knowledge, and that we kind of go out of our, you know, ivory tower and really to build up this European spirit again. There was also another notion is the global south. And it's very, you know, politically difficult, what we have seen on the migration level and the history of colonization and so on. But also here, I think we can't say that it is too late. It's never too late. We also have to build up a self-confidence, a self kind of empowerment of the global south, where also we have a certain responsibility to help them.
Yeah, thank you so much. Stefan, you said we need relational contracts. So is that a little bit wishful thinking? Maybe we won't have these relational contracts unless we have hard and fast regulation. Some of the practices you mentioned, I would consider plainly, you know, contrary to lots of areas of the law. So depending on the jurisdiction you're looking at, but what do you think is the right tool against these abusive practices? Do you think we can do it with regulation? Do you think we need other governance tools? What is your take on that?
Well, there's an issue of accountability also on our side. If you look, what is one of the most effective drivers for the power of these publishing platforms? The ranking systems. As long as we stick to sort of journals and journal rankings, we are screwed. Because this is the perfect mechanism. And there have been studies over studies that this is what is happening. So I think, and we have a few examples, but I'm not so optimistic that this will proliferate in other cases. University of Tampere had insisted, and I have a colleague who told me this story, that in an evaluation of for promotion, the evaluators were not allowed to refer to the journal ranking as an argument. Mm-hmm. Because we do it when we recruit, when we select, build the short lists, and so on. So that's on us. The other, I do agree. You see, the EU is informed about and knows about the monopolistic practices. They need good lawyers and legal experts how to find a way of proving that these are monopolistic practices that are against the law. So I think that leads a lot of development about legal frameworks, even something like copyright. You see, copyright dates from a period where we had printed books and journals. I think we need to find a different concept of copyright and fair use and so on. There are all these discussions already happening, and we heard it earlier from Helga about different formats. They are happening, so I'm not as skeptical as she is. Well, nothing happened. There's a lot happening, but I think again, this as long as we are stuck with this ranking problem, we won't have more, and we won't see more flexibility and creativity and innovation on the front of genre of publications.
Thank you so much. Yeah, no, I really agree. And ERC has also just deleted the ranking of journals from their evaluation criteria. I see the question over there. Given that it's already late, I would like to go to the questions from the floor now. Please, could you? state briefly your name and affiliation.
Hi, my name is Marco Antoniotti. I come from Milan in Italy. And I really liked both presentations that were made right now. And I think, to be very brief, there are several things that I can say, several very interesting little stories. But I think to be very brief, one elephant in the room, or maybe one elephant that is not in the room, and maybe we should bring in to counter the other elephants, is that many of us in our daily jobs, okay, especially some of us who have some leadership responsibilities, sometimes kind of tend to go with the flow and maybe do not want to admit that we need to start thinking about a much bigger public intervention in order to defend our freedoms, our freedom of teachers, our freedom of researchers. My favorite joke right now, and my day job is really computational biology, is that one of the most predatory journals is Nature Communications. Okay, when you have to shell out $10,000 to get published so-called open science, I call that predatory. Okay, so I think that we need to be a little more proactive into promoting the public sector and the public, whatever is geared up for the common good. Okay, so let me just finish here. Thank you.
Thanks. I saw many people in the audience nodding. Hans Ackermans was next. Maybe we collect a couple of questions. And
yes, fine.
And then come back to the panel.
I'm Hans Ackermans, and I indeed yesterday evening said that university politics is village politics. I'm guilty of that, but I do not feel guilty because I intended it as a neutral observation fact. Indeed, I think with Gerti that universities have to collaborate. It has been mentioned many times that the money for AI research is shifting to behind closed walls for profit. And that's a fundamental difference of what the goal of universities should be. Open research for the public good or the public interest. And I think this is a fundamental distinction. It was a little bit debated earlier in the morning, I think at Moshe's talk, but this is a fundamental distinction. However, I would like to make the following comment. If we talk about we are losing the race against, then there is some implicit assumption behind that technology is going into some deterministic direction. But I would like to point out, if you look at all this from a public interest, that will change the research agenda where we focus on. For example, you mentioned it, Sal, green AI. That gives that is more in the public interest, and that gives a whole different research agenda. And another example is more related to inclusion. My project in Africa have to do with inclusion of people into the internet, but many of them are illiterate, and so they speak, but they do not write. And they have their own local languages. Every country in Africa has dozens of local languages. Many of them do not even have an alphabet. So there the issue is, research issue is, you don't have large language models. You simply do not have the corpus for that. So you need to work with small data languages and develop them and small data. So I think focusing on the public interest will also lead to a different research agenda, as a result of which technology develops in a different direction.
Thank you, Hans. If you allow me, I would like to collect maybe two more questions. Gerhard, I think, was next.
Thank you for this talk. I mean, we have to think. It's clear, yeah. But I mean, the obvious reaction is like, of course, we want to protect our freedom, and we have our ethical norms, and therefore, the simple reaction is to say, well, we need regulations, okay? But I think we should discuss this a little bit more in depth. Yeah, I mean, of course, you have these big tech companies, and it seems we have seen a concentration, and maybe we will see even more concentration because of these enormous amounts of resources needed to develop AI. But I mean, at the end of the day, you have a competition between economies, models, or societies of different kinds. I mean, for example, and this is a very old story. I mean, there is this famous book of Schumpeter about socialism, communism, democracy, and which of those are going to win. And I think one of the bottom line of this book is it doesn't matter so much, but you have to. The society must be vital, yeah. So you need progress, yeah. If you don't foster progress, yeah. So destroying something and building something new, then this society system will fail, okay. And we have seen this in the Soviet Union, okay. So I think the big question is now, I mean, we see this concentration, and of course we fear, yeah, that we will lose a lot, but what to do? Yeah, so what are wise, yeah, wise regulations? I mean, if you just regulate in Europe, I mean, then you end up somehow as like you did in the DDR and the BRD, yeah, because people were informed what happened on the other side of the wall, yeah, and at the end of the day, they didn't like the communist system because they thought they are better off with capitalism. So I think it's not that easy that you say, well, just protect our values, and we don't consider the economic development. And just as a comment, it would have been interesting also to have people from economics here, yeah, to discuss this.
Okay, thank you so much. No, well, it's already quite late. We're not going to invite further people from economics here onto this panel. Maybe one further question, and then we have a final round on the panel. I think there was a show of hands somewhere. Okay, two brief questions, please.
Yeah, kind of related to the last comment, that it looks like there is a dissociation of enemies, for saying it in some way. Like Stefan and George were talking about capitalism, like the enemy are these big companies, which they are a threat to the academic system as we see today. But Gerti said that there was an agreement signed about the data security, where the threat there apparently was China or America or whatever is the entity, foreign entity that is threatening the security here. Looks like the policymakers see a threat in, like, I don't care where the technology is being developed, if it is in Meta or if it is in Stanford, couldn't care less as far as it is here, this geographical unit. While the academia feels that it has to be developed in the academia. Like that is the big dissociation that I don't really see in these two talks, like that there was an agreement. And I don't know if there was someone else.
Well, to the lady behind you. Yes, please. Yeah, please.
Thank you. Thank you yet again, Rusudan Makhachishvili, Ukraine. I wanted to comment and to veer the comment a little bit into what George was talking about the vocationality of university training in the post-digital or post-digital revolution age. And since I'm from Ukraine, that is something that has been showcased by the war that is happening, because this is not a war fought by professional soldiers. Not only, this is a general mobilization. And that means that my fellow professors of language and literature ended up operating drones to intercept missiles guided by artificial intelligence systems. So that showcased the need in the dramatic and very brisk reaction into the upskilling and reskilling and introducing the kind of crash courses and interoperable AI and digital literacy trainings for the cross-referential professionals who are forced into situations where they have to operate advanced digital equipment. And that was kind of a call to the universities in Ukraine to devise those crash courses very quickly. And that is something that is probably one of the avenues of developing interoperable digital humanities spawned by such traumatic tragedy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I would suggest that we now have a final round on the panel, replying to all of the questions. So that is always very, very comfortable, actually, because you just reply to the questions which you would like to reply to. And maybe let us do it the other way round. Maybe start with George and then have Stefan and Gerti at the end. So George.
Let me start with a question of research directions that Hans mentioned, that technology development evolution is not deterministic. It can go this way, it can go that way. It's true, but it will be the directions will be determined by those that have the power to determine it. And this is where I think part of the problem lies. There was a comment about not just trying to protect, not just playing defense all the time, but there's a whole array of ways to also go on the attack, so to speak, and this is one of them. This is one of them. I want to congratulate all your colleagues that are responsible. Yes, I know one lady in particular that has wears something of the same color as the book. In the classrooms where a book like this will be taught, sit tomorrow's societies. And there are many other areas where initiatives can and are being taken. So we should not leave the impression that just because in a particular technology things are not going so well for universities that we should give up. And finally, I want to respond to something that Gerti said earlier, which is talk to politicians. I think that's very important. I know that for many of you, many of us, this may be cruel and unusual punishment, which is banned by the US Constitution. But we leaders of universities like you need to talk to politicians. I can assure you that big tech talks to politicians, and they have many ways of talking. So talk to politicians, influence, that's how the game is played.
Thank you so much. Stefan, please.
Just a quick comment on regulation. I know it's a difficult issue, no doubt about it. On the other hand, we had a Tuesday digital humanism call where Rutenberg said, well, our American colleague, the European legislation and regulation is affecting what's happening in the US. So we are seeing effects that were not anticipated, and there were much more concern that it would yield and build more walls and would make it more difficult, but it seems that there's a positive effect. So the other point that you made, and I think this is where it needs certainly more work and time and reflection. I think we are discussing here about fundamental values and principles about economic organization. You see, if we have companies like X, where we see now the political influence and what they do, they have almost endless resources and so on. There's a problem, I think, of society to say, well, is this how we want the society to operate? To have individuals with this amount of power and this amount of money. So I think this is, for me, at least this is the question. I'm not saying I have the perfect answer, but I don't want to live in a society that is structured by this. And we have had, like, it's going back almost to the Middle Ages, what we're seeing right now. And it's not what we typically think about as democratic societies.
Okay. All questions, remarks were very, valuable and have their, have their truth also. But I also really want to kind of close in a positive tone. We were talking now about economies. The Nobel Prize on Economy of this year went to Acemoglu. I hope Darian Acemoglu pronounced the name correctly. About power and technology, power and progress, and in fact he and his colleagues, there are two others, got the Nobel Prize in particular because they have shown that if you only go in this kind of very monolithic direction, at the very end you lose. It is a lose-lose situation. Eh? Perhaps you have the super rich and they have their helicopter and I don't know what they all have and they are living behind the walls because it's too dangerous if they go out. But as a society we will lose. The question is only, can we convince some monopolistic guys behind the walls that they will lose at the very end, either they themselves or their children or their grandchildren? So I would suggest that we invite Darian Acemoglu for the next presentation here. Then we have an economist also, and we continue the discussion. Thank you that you are all here.
Well, thank you so much. It was a wonderful panel, and you already arranged the next conference. So, I would like to congratulate the organizers on this really marvelous conference. I would like to congratulate Hannes on his birthday, and now hand back the mic to him for his closing remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Just a remark, Daron already did a digital humanism lecture, so he has already participated in our lectures online. I would like to thank you all for staying here to the end. I think this was maybe the only mistake with this workshop, that it's too long on Friday afternoon, late time. But you are, before saying something, I would like to thank also the technical guys from the company. I think you did a marvelous job, even cleaning up the glasses I have broken, so really thank you for that. I would like to thank all the speakers and all the panelists and the moderators for the 2 days, so not only you who participated, but also those. All the slides, all the presentations will be online, so visit our website. And we will have the minutes of this 2 days conference will be summarized, and you will have access to that. So you get the summary of that. And we will do something additional. You will be part of an experiment. I'm not announcing now, but be aware that you will be part of an experiment. All the participants, you are invited, and then you can say yes or no whether you want to participate. But I think it will be an interesting case to show also the power of LLMs and ChatGPT. From the content side, we were not so, let's say, when we started to discuss, Stefan and Ludger, we somehow realized that something is going on, okay? Something going on in computer science and science. We really wanted also to refer to the Communist Manifesto. So I have to switch off sorry for that, it's really the best case when you are cold. So we wanted, because in the Communist Manifesto there was the saying, ein Geist geht in Europa, so we wanted to refer to that. And I think it was a timely workshop on a topic where we were not so sure whether it would really work, but looking at it from when it passed, I think it worked out quite well. Also with the focus on computer science starting and going to the broader topic. And I think we can contribute, let's say, to the development of science when we publish the results, when we continue this discussion. When we started, it was not really digital humanism, but it turned out at the end it's a center part of digital humanism, because it's not only provides a framework how to approach the things from different sciences to be active, from research up to politics, from the different topics, but also from the content part. I think it was really becoming clear during this conference that it's a humanistic approach. We need something where humans play a central role. And this is the notion of digital humanism. And this is I had a saying from Sartre I heard by the Viennese, let's say, Minister for Art. She said something like from Sartre, there are better times or there are not so good times we live in, but these are our times, okay? So it's up to us to act and to do something. I wish you all the best. Thank you.